Well, hello, listeners and some viewers. This is the TrueWorks podcast, the podcast that helps you understand how the gospel can transform your work and indeed your wider life. I am your goofy host, Joshua Smith, and with me is my more goofier host, Doug Meikle. That's a technical term. Doug.
Yeah, I'm also not goofy. It's the
You're not
I think
goofy.
that's your specialty. You do goofy. I don't do goofy.
It's my superpower, as you say.
Yeah, superpower to annoy people. Yeah.
I'm trying to just goofify you a little.
Yeah, goofify. That's where we are now. 20 podcasts in, we're at goofify.
That's what you've driven me to, Doug.
Yes, yeah. And what is today's podcast about? Host.
Hope.
Oh.
Hope. And we have a lot of that to share with you because obviously our dynamic is not going to get you there alone or at all. That's what the gospel is for.
Yes.
For hope. Now, we're reading through our Faith Work Intensive, we're reading the great N.T. Wright's Surprised by Hope. Mm-hmm. And it's nicely laid out into 3 different parts. And we're not focusing on the entire work in this podcast, but we're focusing on the third part. The third part, yeah. Yes. The third part, the very last part in Surprised by Hope. For Wright, there's been, it's such a great text for us in the Faith Work Intensive because he is dealing with many of the same themes about what is to come, what kind of hope or looking forward in the future does the gospel promise us as Christians. And he starts kind of at the beginning of the work, so 2 parts back, of kind of typical notions that Christians in the English-speaking world have of what is to come and therefore what their current acts and activities and pursuits are related of what is to come. And then he does something crazy. He goes back to the Bible and he starts reading it more closely than kind of these, they're not ideologies, they're kind of eschatologies of that the world is going to burn up when Christ returns, and that affects everything that how we act currently. Yeah. Now he's come to he's dealt with that in his work, dealt with the weaknesses of that, and now he comes to the last section of, okay, so now that we've kind of made our current life, we've seen the value in it, what is the next life going to be like? And he has this great phrase that he describes this coming life, the life after death. Now that seems maybe a little bit clunky. Do you recall why he uses that phrase of what he's trying to communicate, Doug? I just put you on the spot.
You did put me on the spot there, and if I remember correctly, what he's referring to there is that we, or maybe our church experience here in North America tends to kind of gravitate towards this kind of life after death. What kind of happens to us as we're immediately after death? Mm-hmm. That we kind of rest. What's the biblical phrase? You kind of rest, or those who sleep.
Yeah, like. Those who have fallen asleep, Paul says. Yeah.
So, but that's an interim period. Mm-hmm. There's something that happens after Christ returns that kind of sets up eternal life for those who believe in Christ as he judges and restructures, if you like, the world. And it's that life that happens, that's the life after death.
Yeah.
The eternal life.
And using the kind of turn of phrase, afterlife or life after death, it has its own at least in North America, its own very strong connotation. Mm-hmm. When you think of afterlife or life after death, almost immediately, whether you're Christian or not, it's just baked into our kind of cultural consciousness. Oh, something ethereal, something hyper spiritual, floating on clouds,
Yeah.
perhaps, maybe disembodied, so
Yeah.
on and so forth. And what Wright is trying to get to with this phrase, as Doug was pointing us to, is no, there's an actual life
Yeah.
that is to come.
Yeah.
Like a life not completely different from what we're living now, but better.
But better.
A life
Mm-hmm.
with particular kinds of activities and
Yeah.
interactions that are not just floating on clouds. Although I get this sense, Doug, that in the life after death, that you will be floating on
See,
a cloud with
I just
maybe
knew that was
like
coming. I was
maybe
going
like
to
a
intervene.
cherub,
No.
a little harp, a
I'm
very
like,
little, like a
why
tiny
did I
little
let
harp,
him do
like
this?
ring.
Why
And
did
yes,
I
you'll have
stop?
sound
You need to
sandals.
stop right now.
Okay,
Please
okay.
stop.
I
Okay,
can't
I'm going
decide
to
whether
intervene.
you would have a
No,
robe.
I'm going
Okay.
to intervene right now and
Thank
try
you.
and give a better example, one that doesn't involve Joshua ranting on and trying to describe something that will not exist. But one of the things that I have that I consider a small Christian victory on my part is I have this kind of conception of heaven now, of that life after death, as he calls it here, is the opening scene in one of these that Terrence Malick movie about the German guy who begins in Austria, I think, and he's kind of plowing there, and this kind of beautiful vista in the background, and his wife in there, and their children there.
A
There's
hidden
sense,
life.
a hidden life. That's
Yeah.
right. There's kind of a sense of that kind of intense beauty all around, and this sense of purpose to life and work that is surrounded by others, but also kind of in the context of this beautiful creation that God has made for us, in that case, at that point, remade for us. That seems to me to be a better conception of what heaven is like. For me, at least, that's the thing that motivates me, is to get to a place like that. And because, me as a cherub, not a very attractive thought. No.
Well, you said it, not me, Doug.
Yes, that's right.
And also the simplicity of that kind of idyllic and Edenic scene. If you haven't seen the movie, it's shot in around the German Alps, if I remember. Yeah. So you have did you already say that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it's German and Austrian Alps, but it's certainly and this village, the opening shots are of this village that's, I think, in the high Alps, maybe, I don't know, 8,000 or 10,000 feet up or something like that.
Oh, yeah, and just breathtaking.
Just breathtakingly beautiful.
Yeah.
So in that sense, why is this stuff important? This and how we conceptualize of heaven as important is important because it, as I always say, it bleeds back into the present. So the point for N.T. Wright is that, what is the mission of the church? The mission of the church and its people is to participate in God's redeeming purpose for the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And not simply for, quote unquote, our hearts.
No.
Nothing less.
Yeah.
Nothing less. But we've been so focused on the decision for Christ or the transforming of hearts, which of course are in the text. But Jesus came not for the hearts of people. He came for the world. That includes the hearts, but includes the rocks too.
Yeah. My sense is, and this is after, being a Christian for a long time now, is that misconception that we have, I don't know where it came from, but it's maybe part of this sacred-secular divide, or this divided humanity that we have, that there are some godly things and ungodly things, or maybe it's all the way back to the spiritual is the real, and the corporal, the body is somewhat less. There's no sense of that, I think, in the New Testament, and I think that there's no sense that if we have the eyes to see, there's no sense of that in the New Testament, and that redemption, if like, it's not just a redemption of our minds, not redemption of our hearts, not those kinds of metaphors that we use. It's of the whole self, of the whole self. So what the vision of us in heaven is not some kind of disembodied mind, but of this renewed and made perfect self. And that renewed and made perfect self, to exist, is going to be placed within a renewed and made perfect life here on earth in this creation. And his point is that, guys, churches, you guys need to go starting the work. I've inaugurated that new creation in the life, death, ultimately the resurrection of Jesus. God is telling us, I've inaugurated this new time, this new eternity. You guys need to get started in making it happen. Making it happen with me, I should say, not instead of me, but with me.
Yeah. I mean, we're still completely dependent upon the power and the grace of Jesus Christ, but the scope of the work that we're doing and what we're appealing to and inviting people into through evangelism and showing them the gospel is something that includes, not ironic at all. It includes their work and their everyday activities. It includes the cosmos, the stars, the planets, the very fabric of the world. Paul says that creation is growing for the sons of God to be revealed. And we get to, in a sense, if I can stretch the metaphor, we get to assuage or answer that groaning of the rocks, of the land that is wanting the sons of God and the Son of God to be revealed. He has this great, he has many great descriptions in this third point in his book, but I wrote one down that I wanted to share with you, the quote. He's speaking of gardening and how gardening is one of the small works that that's already connected to the new Jerusalem, to the new heavens and the new earth. And he says, we are not planting flowers that will eventually be dug up. Rather, we are planting in what will one day be a beautiful garden, end quote. The work we do in the present will be, as strange as it may sound, part of the complete renewal to come. And this is really a metaphor for all of our work and activities. The fire that the scriptures surely mention is not an annihilating fire, but a purifying fire. In the same way that gold is refined, where you heat it up and the impurities float to the top because they're lighter than the precious element. You scrape it off and then you keep on doing it over and over. The quote-unquote fire that the scriptures mention is a purifying one, but that one that comes and allows what is pure through, what has already been, what is of the precious metal, metaphorically through. And I just think...
So do you have a garden at home?
Doug,
yes.
We have tried to have several little tiny gardens on our little patio.
Yeah.
And everything has died.
Well,
so those things will not make it to...
Yes.
Maybe they're resurrected.
They didn't even make it through your garden.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we have 4 17-inch pots and some little smaller pots, and we even have an automatic watering system. I mean, like how much...
And you still managed to kill that stuff?
And they still die.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like the gardening metaphor, and I like the gardening...
Do you have a garden?
Yeah.
You have like a wondrous garden.
Well, wondrous, if it is wondrous, then it's because...
it has lemon trees.
It does have lemon trees. Orange trees, yeah. We got lemons and oranges.
Oh, I didn't know
that.
Oranges.
Yeah.
Is that new?
New in the sense of... They grow over the year and show up at the end of the year. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I thought I knew all things about your garden.
Yeah, you definitely do not. Yeah.
There's also cats in your garden.
There are cats in my garden. It's just a veritable Eden out there. Yes.
It is. It's a wild place.
Yeah, and but I like that metaphor because I think here's a practical way that you can encourage. When people become Christians, we always tell them to go to a I don't know, small group and read your Bible or something. Maybe we should tell them, go grow something. Go plant something. Go make it grow. Yeah. And look, then there is a seriousness to that, in the sense that we send people down the road of forming their mind, which is important. But here's a place specifically where one can form the environment in which we live.
Yeah.
And I think that is also part of the formation discipline. And this relates also to work, right?
Yeah.
Is that if your metaphorical garden is your place of work, can you tend for that and care for it in such a way that it flourishes?
Yeah.
And I think that's his whole point here is he's not using gardening as a metaphor. He is and he isn't.
Only.
He's only. That's right.
Yeah.
He is saying your job to go out there and make beautiful things and beautiful gardens is a real job. Mm-hmm. It's not just a metaphor for the future. It's something that's concrete and actual and can be done. However, in so doing, it can be a metaphor for other elements of your life that you can create and curate. Isn't that the word that you kids say these days? Curate things. You create stuff, don't you?
I'm not down with the kids
You're
on
not
the
down
street.
with, clearly not
Yeah.
down with the kids. Anyway, but the point is you can create and curate and create an environment around you that is reflective of this greater future. And that's what he's calling us to. So he's calling us to, as the choice, if you're in the church or if you're leading a business or in work, just to simply, I don't know, if you're in a church, preach and teach, baptize, what do they call hatch, match, and dispatch? You know, you do the babies. You do the babies, you do the weddings, you do the funerals, and then just wait. Or in the face of injustice, you just think, well, I guess it's an unjust world. I'll wait till Jesus comes back. Do you just kind of hang around and wait? Or are you called to do something? Mm-hmm. And his whole point is that, no, we are profoundly called to act in the world because Jesus has inaugurated a new world that we now live in. Mm-hmm. It may not be as it will be in the end, but in this moment, we are called to act. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, again, we can talk about this stuff and Wright can talk about it all day long in terms of the history or the theology or the exegesis or interpretation of these New Testament stories, and that is important. But the end of that story is we need to go act in the world because Christ has inaugurated a new order of things that we are now a part of and that we need to get on and help with.
And I think it's important for our listeners to understand those two components, that of the theology and then the acting, that one is not more important than the other, right? Yeah. Like, because there are some traditions, and Wright nicely examines these, that emphasizes act almost over, if you will, theology. Mm-hmm. And the motivations for the act he reveals are different than kind of the motivations that he is grounding for us. Yeah. And, one of the illustrations that the divides that he's trying to eliminate is that there's some type of tension between these two. No, we don't need to just have great theology and then wait and not act. And we don't need to just act and let the theology away. It's like, no, these interpenetrate and support one another, right? One of the small ways that my wife, Katie, and I are trying to metaphorically garden. You asked me about my literal garden. We know how that ended up. But we've been, as I've been going through preparing these podcasts, and especially...
Wait, you prepare these?
Yes. No, these were all impromptu. From a few weeks ago when we read Fujimara, we've been impressed that we haven't taken as much time as we need to really bring and beautify our house, bring out the beauty in our home, especially through some artwork. Mm-hmm. And artwork is expensive. You have to take time to pick it out. It has to match it, blah, blah. And we just said, that can wait some other time. But it's like, no, this is our proverbial garden, and this is the environment that our children are growing up. And we have a budget and everything, but how can we bring a redemptive beauty to this place. So that's one of our goals for this
that's
year.
cool. That's a good goal to have.
But that's very small. I mean, I'm not like changing occupations or something.
No, but but I think hold on though. I think that
I'm holding.
Yeah, you should quit talking, for goodness sake, man. The point I was going to make there is that, and I've noted this is true in business as well. Is that doing simple things is not simple. Yeah. So in business, doing simple things well and repeating them is actually a very difficult thing. And I think oftentimes in our kind of broader life, the simple, when we say, oh, that's a simple thing, it often doesn't get done. Yeah. So I think for you and your art, you can find a way of making that your own little garden. And or you might conclude that it's only my little space, it's only my small space, my home. What difference does that make in the world?
Well,
it doesn't get done.
Yeah, and that's kind of been it's like, okay, like this is, by all accounts livable. But then it's like, oh man, where's Katie and I enjoy beautiful music and beautiful art, and yet we don't kind of put in the you've diagnosed me well.
Well, yeah. In several different dimensions, But no, I think that's it. But that's also a point where, I don't know. It seems to me, I feel as I have grown older in life, that element of beauty and action and working in the world has become more important to me. It's become more important to me and I think it's become more important because I've learned that for Christians that it's foundationally important. It's just getting the right doctrines or getting the right things in your head. It's not unimportant, but at the same time, if that's all you have, you don't really have that much. You know?
Yeah,
you don't really have that much.
Just painfully incomplete.
Yeah, painfully incomplete.
Yeah.
Yeah. I often use, and I've used many times during the course of these podcasts, either farming or cooking or the butcher and all this kind of thing. And why do I use those examples? Because they're so embodied. They're so very much part of our human existence. And we can look at food. Didn't we talk about we talked about Calvin also recently in his little book of the Christian life, and how there's a set there at the end that God could make food like they had it in Star Trek, right? Where you remember the old Star Trek where you press a button, a glass of water, and 2 pills comes out. Yeah, he could have made work that like that, but he didn't. He made it full of savor and flavor that we may enjoy even our sustenance. Yeah, and I think that when we reduce. When we kind of reduce that just to calorie intake or just to whatever intake, then we're dehumanizing ourselves. So taking the time, later today, I'm going to a friend of mine's house because he wants me to cook something for him, and because he couldn't do it, and I just feel so it's going to take. He realized last night. He says, "Wait, this is going to take 3 hours," and I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Wow, this is kind of like cooking." And I said, "Yes, it's kind of like it's not just throwing a piece of meat on something; it's actually enjoying the process."
Which is an achievement in itself
for some people, right?
When your base level is like dino nuggets, like throwing a piece of meat on the grill is
fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But 3 hours of
it's a bit like tending the garden, right?
Yeah.
It's not about I can get the same calorie intake in, I don't know, a couple of kind bars or something like that. But it's not nearly as much fun, or it's not nearly as human, it's not nearly as much enjoyment. His point around this garden.
Not nearly as beautiful.
Not nearly as beautiful. The garden, I can have a space there that's just concrete and grass, or I can tend to something that brings forth the beauty of the creation. And by not doing that work, we dehumanize ourselves and place ourselves in this position where we don't enjoy the creation that's around us, where we are just waiting. We're like, okay, Jesus, you need to come back now so that everything will be fine. And his promise to us is, you can have that life now. You can have it right now.
Yeah, I came for you to have life and life abundantly. Yeah, and that promise begins now.
That promise begins now.
It doesn't eliminate sin. It doesn't eliminate your garden sometimes dying.
Yeah.
Yes. But I'm reminded of the illustration you gave at the beginning of this year with Tuscany, and how Karen had pointed out that this beauty of Tuscany would not be present if it was not cultivated for not just centuries, but
thousands of years.
Yeah,
since the Etruscans arrived in 1,000 years or so BC.
Yeah. I mean, that's just. Yeah,
that's one of our favorite places in the world. You guys have heard that now too. That's one of my favorite places in the world. But that insight there of Karen's, I think, was really important to me this year. I'd not noticed that I'd seen but not paid attention to the fact that I was in a human-formed environment, and it was kind of transcendentally beautiful. And I would not be enjoying that if it was not for the work of people over centuries to be able to create that. And what Wright is really trying to say here is that that's the perspective that we should have in our work. In Houston, I love being in Houston, and these podcasts are obviously for people in Houston, and we are a business that's in Houston. But one of Houston's, and that's true of many American cities, one of its drawbacks is that it consumes the past. That it doesn't build things to last. Oftentimes it builds things to be consumed and then are torn down. Then it's hard to kind of build that beauty over time. And I think there's, a real profound kind of challenge to us as human beings, I think, is that when you go around Europe and watch and see some of those great cathedrals and things and stuff that's been built, I often ask myself, who will build those things again? Yeah. And
it's not just going to take a new architectural form. It's like it was in their bones.
It's in their bones.
Right? Yeah. Right. So these classic, the art, for example, I mean, that is a classic. I'm no architectural guru or anything like that, but, that's just for centuries that has been something quite beautiful to put over doorways and walkways and so on. And it's actually quite simple. Yeah. Right? But there's something in the nature of it and us that's appealing to us, these kind of classical architectural forms, and lo and behold, they last for hundreds of years. Yeah. And we don't want to tear them down. Yeah. Roger Scruton has a great book and program on beauty where he goes through these architectural forms and said, this was super popular in the 70s, and now we want to tear it down.
We want to tear it down. Yeah.
Because it's so ugly. Yeah. In a sense. And I look at some buildings. Yeah, we are a modern city in Houston.
So relating that to, and I hope you guys are getting this point here, is that there's in this third part of Surprised by Hope, he's trying to some extent motivate us to change the world around us with the perspective of eternity. With that, and I think there are two senses to that. One is to create things that will last in eternity because they're so beautiful, in one sense. And then the second sense is take small steps towards the beautiful or the good or the eternal, and be okay with those small steps, because someone will come after you and take that one step further forward and have the perspective of eternity as you work and as you place things into the world.
The burden is not all on you to get it from 0 to 100, so to speak.
You need to get, for example, get it to 0 to 1 or something. Know that there are others coming after you in the same tradition and in the same eternal journey that will take that on. And when ultimately we enjoy that eternity with Jesus, we will see our work within that journey. Yeah. No, it's N.T. Wright has really been very helpful to me, and obviously he's a real kind of help to us in the Faith and Work course, but he's been super helpful to me over the course of the last 10 years or so, helping me change my perspective, I think, of what I was really reading in the New Testament as well, and the vision of the New Testament.
Yeah. And I think that's a fitting place that we can come to an end for this podcast episode. Thank you for joining us, for looking into the last part of Surprised by Hope by N.T. Wright. I have been your co-host, Joshua Smith. This has been my co-host, Doug Meikle. If you would like to hear more of our podcasts are available on all platforms, or you can find them at our website, www.trueworkshouston.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you.